So thank you everyone that has joined, and hopefully some more people will join a little bit later in the during the call. But the purpose of today's discussion is basically we are trying to keep engaged with our spoke sites. So these calls are standard. They're on your calendar. They are scheduled for every 3 months. Um, so for those who are on the call, thank you so much for attending. So Dan and John are going to be pretty much running this call. They're going to go through with you um, some of the most recent changes we have just had to our protocol and discuss the importance of your all's participation as spoke referring physicians for this trial. So Dan, I'm going to pass it along to you.
I am going to present some slides, and then John can weigh in. I mean, John's been the one who's been most intimately involved with all of the sites and the referral centers. So, and then after that, we can see what questions, comments anyone has. And let me go ahead and share. And Annette, I'll rely on you to tell me if it's working. Can you see that?
Not seeing anything.
How about now?
Yep, I see it now.
Okay. Yeah. And I'll put it in presentation mode. Okay, that works still.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. So for those of you on the call, or those of you who may listen to this later, welcome. As Annette said, this is what we call the hub and spoke model meeting, and we're trying to do this quarterly to keep everyone engaged to the best of our abilities. So I just wanted to give a little bit of overview of where things stand with the study currently, and then we'll take it from there. This will take just 10 minutes or so. So why are we doing this? I presented this slide, or we've presented this slide before, but this is now updated through July of 2025. So we're still well below, where we want to be in terms of enrollment, expected enrollment, which is supposed to be, close to 200 now, and we're at 72. So about 40% of the target. So one, of course, that's not good, but two, we have actually enrolled a fair number of participants. I think, as I've said before, it's now the second largest randomized controlled trial of psychosis treatment ever in Parkinson's disease, but we just need to get it to a more reasonable end. So that's one point to be made. So this is an overview of the study. It's always helpful to have this to ground us. So we're here in this study, this clinical trial, randomized trial. We're assessing whether pimavanserin is superior to quetiapine in the treatment of Parkinson's disease psychosis. And if it's not superior, is quetiapine at least non-inferior to pimavanserin for the treatment of Parkinson's psychosis, which also is of clinical significance. We're assessing this through the CGI eyes, Clinical Global Impression of Improvement. We also have a rating scale specific for psychosis and Parkinson's disease, the SAPS-PD. We're assessing motor function through the MDS-UPDRS Part 3 and CGI-I Parkinsonism. And we also have informed other or care partner burden assessed. And we also are looking at cognitive changes just globally through the MoCA, daytime sleepiness and nighttime sleep, which is relevant to these antipsychotic medications, participant function, well-being, and tolerability through a couple of different assessments. But that's also, of course, very important, not just efficacy, but tolerability with antipsychotics and Parkinson's. So that's the overview, which you've seen before. The study design is 14 sites currently, but I'll be updating that shortly. Randomized to either quetiapine or pimavanserin for 8 weeks of treatment. I'll be giving the reason for that update shortly as well. Double-blind comparator study with a block randomization across cognitive status based on their MoCA score. So here's the overview of recent changes. So the big one for us, which we've been working on for months and just finally got approval through the CIRB last week, not locally yet, but CIRB, is to remove phases 2 and 3 from the study. So that phase 2, as a reminder, was for people who didn't respond to their assigned antipsychotic in phase 1 to be assigned to the other antipsychotic in phase 2. Phase 3 was for people who did respond to their antipsychotic in the 8-week phase 1 to continue on that antipsychotic for up to a year duration. Because for multiple reasons, we decided to remove phases 2 and 3. All the primary objectives for the study are in phase 1 anyway. So this greatly simplifies the study. In addition, we also, for budgetary reasons, largely, we had to make another cut in the number of sites. So going from 14 that I had on the previous slide, we had to eliminate 6 sites as of October 1st, this coming October 1st. So we will be down to 8 official sites for the study effective that date. So those are like the 2 biggest changes that have been made. They're both big changes recently. So back to the hub and spoke model, as a reminder. So we have current active study sites that will be 8 sites essentially from this point moving forward, with referring physicians at non-study centers in serving as spokes. So just being able to refer patients for evaluation for pre-screening for the study. Once a referred patient is enrolled in the study and becomes a research participant at the hub, which is an existing study site, we implement the full, virtual option, which is available for the study, which means all study activities are performed at the hub. So the spoke doesn't really have any responsibilities at that point in terms of anything to do with the patient for the purposes of the study anyway. The roles and the expectations. So we're asking people at referral centers to refer patients with a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, idiopathic Parkinson's with clinically significant psychosis that would warrant treatment, that you would feel that they meet the inclusion criteria for study participations and are not aware of meeting any exclusion criteria based on the list we've provided, and that we need the permission or you need the permission of the patient to have his or her contact information forwarded to the study site via the National Study Coordinator, Tamara, so the patient can be contacted and pre-screened, and that permission should be documented, ideally in a CPRS note in the patient's chart. So we're, above board on all of this. All right. This is a small font, but I just wanted to make the point that on the left-hand column, we would have the 8 sites moving forward and paired with approximately 60 referral centers now. So all the ones before, plus the sites that will no longer be sites, but hopefully will be referral centers moving forward. So this is just a listing here. And, again, this is what John has spent a whole lot of time working on. So I just wanted to point that out for now. So we did do a spoke survey at one point just to get a sense of how the many patients people thought they might be able to refer and what roadblocks there might be to referring patients. And we got responses from 16 referral centers to the survey. All the referral centers thought that patients could be identified and referred for pre-screening. And at the rate that we were hoping for, maybe 1 patient per year would be a huge boon to the study, given that we have so many referral centers. When issues were raised, it had to do, some of the things that were brought up by these 16 centers included not everyone having idiopathic Parkinson's disease, but some fair amount of atypical Parkinsonism, maybe not sufficient number of Parkinson's patients with psychosis that would warrant treatment, or that it's not severe enough. The next row, they might already be treated with an antipsychotic for psychosis. So of course, for the most part, that's not allowed for the study unless it's like a very low dose of quetiapine or it has to have been in the past if they're on quetiapine or pimavanserin. Patient is reluctant to be in a research study. Of course, we all know that that occurs, or there's no care partner available. That's come up a few times. So the summary, this is the last slide for me, is that if you have any potential patients, we have Tamara as the National Study Coordinator. She can be reached by phone, she can be reached by email, she responds quickly, and she could take any patient information and forward it to the appropriate site for pre-screening. So I was going to end the presentation there, so I will stop sharing, and I want to let John go next, add anything he wants in terms of today's call.
Thanks, Dan. So I don't have any, pre-planned comments. I think obviously the thing we're trying to figure out is how best to facilitate this whole hub and spoke model. It looks like there's about 10 of the spoke providers on the call. Thank you to all of you. I know you guys are busy and have lots of things to do in this hour. We appreciate you being here. A few spoke providers have been successful in referring patients, but in general, it hasn't been as successful as we had hoped. And I'd just like to hear honestly and truthfully from you guys if there's anything you think we could do to improve that. I mean, we're asking a lot of you guys to basically help out with a trial that you're not getting compensated for or anything, and it's a lot easier to just put a patient on dose of Seroquel than to set all this up. But obviously, Dan and I believe in this trial that'll help people, people with Parkinson's moving forward. And we all, I think I've referred 3 patients, maybe 4 patients, but that's been over, close to 3 years now. So I'm not blaming any of you. I think it's entirely possible that a bunch of you just haven't seen a patient that you thought would qualify yet. But if we're always, the whole course of this study, we've been looking for ways to modify the inclusion exclusion criteria, to modify the protocol to make things easier and productive while maintaining the integrity of the basic scientific questions that we're trying to answer. So again, thank you, and please let us know that we're doing everything that you think we could to make this a success, and if not, please speak up and let us know what else you think we can do.
I'll ask one question and see if anybody wants to speak up about it, because I'm curious, in light of what we just said about removing phases 2 and 3 and just going to a phase 1, just an 8-week commitment. Do people think that will make it easier to refer patients, or they don't know that that'll make any difference at all?
Or harder, maybe. Taking out the year of medication may make it harder.
That's a good point.
Hi, Dan and John. This is Jim Ash in Minneapolis.
Hi.
I don't think I doubt that it's going to make much of a difference. I don't think I've had a single patient who said, the study's too long, I don't want to be in it. The reasons that they don't want to be in it are some of the ones you mentioned. I would say actually that the 2 most common among the ones you mentioned, at least for us, are, yes, they have some hallucinations, but and whether they pass the criteria for the study or not, they really don't want them treated. They don't find them that bothersome, is one. I think the major one for us is that we lose a lot of patients because, by the time we are alerted the patient is already on an antipsychotic. And then that's a really tough situation. I mean, it's almost unethical to say, well, you know, could you go off it for a few weeks and then see what happens? I mean, of course, we could follow them along and then stop the antipsychotic, and if they got better, etc. But yeah, I actually have a question. Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah,
Which is from what Dan said in the presentation. It seems as if you would like the spokes to work through Tamara and, I mean, the central administration, or do you want them to directly contact the sites that they're associated with?
Traditionally we've been saying, or up to date, we've been saying to contact Tamara, because there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, so we can keep track of everything. We don't want to put the onus on the hub people to let us know that the patient has been referred. Number two, there are situations wherein perhaps a particular site may be overwhelmed, or just lost their study coordinator or whatever.
Okay.
So and we're hopeful that Mara is going to be available more than a lot of typical site hub LSIs. So we think that that's the way to go. If we start having problems with that, then we're certainly willing to modify that. But so she's going to reach out. It does add an extra step, and it makes things a little bit longer. But as soon as she contacts the LSI or study team at the hub, then the hope is that they would call you or the site provider immediately, or the spoke provider. I just want to clarify also about patients already on or left at the already on antipsychotic therapy. Number one, obviously, we don't want anybody enrolled who's responding to therapy, whatever it is, because we don't want them to kick it off. But we agree completely that would be unethical. The only situation wherein people are eligible for the study who are already being treated is if they're treated with quetiapine less than 50 milligrams. So if they're on 12.5 or 25 and they're not responding, then they can go off for a week and then be enrolled. I just had a patient like that of my own. That's saying that possibly they're undermedicated. We're not taking them off of an efficacious therapy. And, if they're not responding, but they're in a, just like a regular patient, if they're in an acute situation where you really think they need to be treated well, aggressively and right now, then don't enroll them either. But there are a fair number of people who get put on low dose 25 of Seroquel. You find out about it 2 days later, in the chart because they went to the ER or something. Those patients, I think, are a good opportunity to
if they don't respond.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim, for speaking up, and I hope anyone else on the call will as well. I mean, there's no question or comment that we don't want to hear, because any conversation is better than no conversation for us. So, and I just want to say I agree. The timing is the hardest thing, just getting the right person at the right time, and just not much you can do about that. And about the dosing, this isn't exactly the point you were making, but we did wonder at one point, if we were maybe being too strict with our NPI criteria with a score of 4 or greater, although that's kind of standard. So what we did do is to look at the SAPS PD scores, which we have at baseline, and compare it with the SAPS PD score in the Cummings and all pimavanserin study, the pivotal one. And actually our scores are already lower at baseline than they were in that trial. So I don't think it's like we're being too stringent in our requirements. We're already kind of on we're allowing the mild end in already. And what you bring up as an additional point is, would you even clinically treat these people, or does a patient want to be treated at the model then?
So
We've
Dan,
also, sorry, go ahead, Annette.
I was just going to say, Dr. Sung from Birmingham did weigh in and said the removal of phases 2 and 3 would help him easier explain the study to the potential participant.
Us too.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I saw it and I forgot about it. That's true. You know, I think there are other things that we've thought about, like Dan said, the MPI criteria, and you know, whether or not we really should force everybody to get the 50 milligrams of clothianidin. And Dan and I have gone back and forth about that. There was lost, some people couldn't tolerate titrating up higher. But you know, anything like that, if there's, I mean, you guys won't be doing that part, but if you come across anything where it's not the things that we're kind of discussing, you know, for some other reason, they you're not able to refer people if it's happening. I mean, if it happens once and it's not something that we know all about, like they're already on a neuroleptic, they don't have an informed other, although we talked about then maybe that criteria as well. You know, something else that you think, if the inclusion exclusion criteria was different or the protocol was different, you might have been able to refer somebody, please don't hesitate to reach out. And I think all of you have my cell phone.
Comments or questions from anyone else?
So
Yeah.
to the spoke sites that are on, what can Dan and John do to assist you all or the entire study team to help you out in being able to refer participants?
Or even easier, have you come close to referring someone recently and couldn't do it for some reason?
I have, John. I think one of the things I've run into is that I take care of so many veterans that are kind of that borderline between DLB and PD. And they've been called DLB forever because that's what someone assigned to them, you know, at the onset of the disease, even though when you really try to pick it apart, it may not have been clear-cut DLB by criteria. So I've had 2 patients that I was like, I almost pulled the trigger on sending to you guys, but it's just in their chart, everything is DLB, DLB, DLB.
That's good feedback, Ornella. Thank you. I mean, we have seen that before, and obviously it's so subjective, that distinction. I mean, the fact that they, you know, I see a lot more the other way around. People are called PD when they really probably should be called DLB. But if, you know, I believe in the protocol, we kind of left it up to the referring or to the LSI's discretion on, you know, if obviously we all know that CPRS has misdiagnoses all the time. If you are confident that someone actually has PDD instead of DLB, and you know, you put that in your note, I think we'd be, you know, just because their note is covered with DLB doesn't mean they have DLB. I don't know. We haven't actually talked much about including DLB. Thanks for bringing that up. Maybe we'll have to keep that in mind. I don't think we're gonna go there. It makes it dirtier, but
I was just going to agree with John. I mean, Ornella, I would leave it to you or the LSI or the referring clinician as kind of the experts, unless you really have high confidence that the diagnosis was accurate, that if based on your evaluation of the patient, you think it's really idiopathic Parkinson's. I mean, I see people clinically that have a label of DLB and they're not even demented as far as I can tell. They might have mild cognitive impairment, so they don't even meet the formal criteria for DLB even years into the illness, as far as I can tell. That's like one example. So,
I think there's
I
so
disagree
many
with John.
examples that are just a little nuanced like that, right? Like maybe they did start with cognitive symptoms. So by criteria, it was 6 months or more of cognitive symptoms before Parkinsonian symptoms started, but now they have unilateral resting tremor and it's pretty like tremor predominant disease, and they haven't declined as quickly as you would think a DLB patient would. So it just changes your thinking,
The 2015 clinical criteria for Parkinson's disease no longer exclude dementia at baseline at the time of diagnosis, does not exclude you from a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. So it's an area of controversy, but you can have cognitive impairment at disease onset in Parkinson's. You can have cognitive impairment prodromally in Parkinson's. So it is tricky, but I think you just have to make your best judgment. But I think the main point I just want to agree with John on is just not to just be deterred simply by a chart diagnosis. It's more your assessment of the whole clinical history.
That's helpful.
And presumably these guys have all been affected for 10 years or more. So going back to that early part and saying, were they really MCI or dementia at the onset, it may be really hard. We get that. But if, like you said, you have someone who, if you were seeing them today and making the diagnosis, you would say PDD. That's good enough for me and Dan, despite what other people in the chart have said.
Did I see
Dr.
something
Morley?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I thought I saw a hand up, or there's Jim.
Yeah. Hey, and Ornella, I know we've kind of gone back and forth about some of these folks, so thanks for being engaged. I would say, just as an LSI, if it crosses your mind that the patient might be eligible and they're interested in hearing more, that's all I think we need for you to send it to us. We would much rather screen fail 10 people than miss one potential participant. And Dan and John and I have talked about this, that I mean, there are these chart diagnoses, but it's really the opinion of the LSI, I think, that trumps the diagnosis. And so it can be all over the chart, but if the LSI reviews it and thinks that PD is the most likely diagnosis, then I think those patients are still eligible. So I would say, if you think of it and they're interested, just send it along and let the local sites kind of sort it out.
That's helpful. Good. Yeah, the one guy I almost sent is now on flecainide, so cardiac, cardiac contraindication now. But yeah, thanks.
That's a good point, Jim. Thanks. You don't have to be, it doesn't, for you guys, for you hub people, for your spoke people, they're on the side of referring them, and we'll take it from there.
I was just familiarizing myself with the criteria, and it says diagnosis. John knows this better than I do, but diagnosis of Parkinson's consistent with a modified UK Disease Society Brain Bank clinical diagnostic criteria. And under that, it says an exclusion is early severe dementia with disturbances of memory, language, and praxis. So in my mind, that leaves open the possibility of, something less than early severe dementia as being still consistent with Parkinson's. You agree, John, or?
Yeah, I mean, I have to go back. Hearing you say that makes sense. I didn't remember the word severe in there. And our so you were reading from our modified
Well, this is just I'm actually just reading from the UK PD Society Brain Bank Diagnostic Criteria. I can't tell if it's the modified or if the modified changes that word severe.
We kind of made it easier to make the diagnosis. I don't remember if we changed that or not. I don't think so. And that, if you can you pull up the modified UK Brain Bank criteria that we're using?
Is that
Go ahead.
Is that on the case report form? I believe it is.
Then maybe you could pull it up easier than I could. And it even says consistent with it. It doesn't even say they have to meet it. It just has to be consistent with it.
But yeah.
Here we go.
So it just says
Consistent with the source document.
But we changed it to consistent with because, and then I thought we actually provided a modified UK Brain Bank. We took out stuff about whether or not it's hereditary, whether or not there were some other things. So it's not on this form, but somewhere else we did put together a modified UK Brain Bank that makes it easier to make the diagnosis.
I think it has source document in there, so maybe is it a source? Is there a form? And that
I'm going to the
yeah, I can't remember how we applied it.
yeah, and there's so many files out here. Give me 1 second.
Even if we don't get this addressed today, it's something that we can look into.
You guys.
Let me, yeah.
Reminder.
Yeah, it's not in the protocol itself, any more detail other than that, so it would have to be somewhere else if it's.
Let me see if I can find it. Desktop.
I think it's in the form instructions.
Eligibility. Here we go. I thought I saw it. There we go. Modified UK Brain Bank.
Yeah, there you go. So the first part's the same, and then the exclusion criteria were decreased.
It does have dementia, the kind of the
Dementia
traditional deal.
prior to, or but it's dementia, like Dan said, not mild cognitive impairment.
All right, so that's good to hear. And I guess to Ornella's point, anyone just has to kind of make their best judgment if that applied. Okay. Other questions or comments? The only other thing I wanted to make sure I said before the end of the call was to John's point about, we know we're asking a lot and without much in return. So but I just want to remind everyone, I mean, what we're providing is to patients in the field, trying to answer some unanswered questions, which is the relative efficacy, tolerability of the two most commonly used antipsychotics for Parkinson's disease. With really kind of a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, we still know that quetiapine is 80+% of prescriptions, and should it be? Does that make sense? And I think those are the kinds of questions we can help answer. And then more specifically, I think John and I have been in the VA both now for close to 25 years, and we're proud. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I'm proud of the work that I've done in the VA, continue to be both clinically, but clinical research. And so I have a, strong vested interest. I think we all do in, making sure this is studies as successful as possible for the VA specifically, because it's an important trial in that regard as well. So I try to keep those things in mind. And so that's what you'd also be contributing to as well when you refer patients to us.
Another thing to discuss, I guess, that I don't think we talked about in the previous one of these previous meetings like this, what to do with a patient when they're done. And it's gonna be even more important now that everybody's only gonna be in it for 8 weeks. How do you treat them afterwards? And obviously it'd be really nice if they responded to know what they're on, but unfortunately we can't do that. So just my own experience, I think I've had 3 people do this now, and I look at how many titrations they took, what stage they were on, and I don't believe there's any reason why a hub provider couldn't tell you that. So as a spokesperson, if someone gets up to stage 5 and responds, or stage 4 and responds, in my mind it's probably quetiapine, right? Because it's possible that they're on the same dose of pimavanserin the whole time and just finally responded, but it's probably more likely that they're on the other one. And in those cases, I don't really want to start them back at like 25 milligrams. So if that's the case and they've been on it for a while, especially I had a patient who finished phase 3, and another, 2 of them have finished phase 3. I didn't want to drop their dose down from what likely is 200 milligrams down to 25. So I start them off at I send them 50 milligram extended release, I think. I tried to use the extended release because remember that's what we're using in the study, and I don't know, I'm beginning to believe that maybe makes a difference. And I think the one guy I sent 50 milligrams, take one. If he feels fine, take the second one the same day, and then go on from there to taking 100 each day, and just or maybe I said 50 for 2 days or something, but ramp them up quicker than you normally would, and I still don't go to pimavanserin unless they fail quetiapine. So that it's kind of, we're asking a little bit more of you guys to do that as well. But there's changes in the protocol that's going to clearly delineate that they're not going to know what medication they're on when they're done with the trial. So hopefully they'll be well informed, and that won't be a problem like it has been with some patients and even providers actually. But if you ever have a question about how to treat someone when they're done with the trial, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Not that I have all the answers, but at least I'll give you a reassurance that whatever you're planning on makes sense.
Well, people have given us 45 minutes of their time already, and most of the people on the call. So I don't know that we need to extend it unless there's some specific to discuss. You think, Annette, we're okay to bring it to a close, or?
Yeah, I think we're okay to bring it to a close. I will publish all these documents. You can go back and look at them. And our next call will be the first, I believe it's the first Wednesday in November. It's already on your calendars.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Great, thank you.
you.
Thank you.
So long.